about religious dialogue in a multi-faith Australia. And it talks about the relationship between Aboriginal people and non-Aboriginal people. There's an acronym on the board, and it says ATSI. You can see that that acronym is short for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. And we can refer to people as ATSI or non-ATSI. So that's just a nice abbreviation for that. The focus of this lesson, though, however, is on the process of reconciliation. How have the religious institutions in Australia handled being involved in the process of reconciliation? I want you actually to write down this sentence right now, okay, in the introduction. Write down this sentence. These next 20 words are gold, and I want you to repeat them in any question that you have for outcome 9. First word, in. In. Under the introduction, in the space that you put under introduction, write down the first word, which is in. In recent decades, different religious traditions. In recent decades, different religious traditions in Australia have had a growing appreciation. In recent decades, different religious traditions in Australia have had a growing appreciation of Aboriginal spirituality. In recent decades, different religious traditions in Australia have had a growing appreciation of Aboriginal spirituality and have become... That was attached. In recent decades, different religious traditions in Australia have had a growing appreciation of Aboriginal spirituality. In recent decades, different religious traditions in Australia have had a growing appreciation of Aboriginal spirituality and have become involved in supporting the movement for reconciliation. And have become involved in supporting the movement for reconciliation. That is a very good opening sentence for outcome number 9. If you got this question in the HSC exam, you would start it with those 20 words.
In supporting the movement for reconciliation.
Okay, is everyone with me?
Yeah.
Everyone out there with me?
Thanks.
Okay.
Right. Is that it for the introduction?
Definitely, that's it. Right. Let's move on to the next point of the lecture, which is Christianity. Now, so what's Christianity's role been with these Aboriginal people over the time frame that we are interested in? Well, Christian churches have been a very big part. In fact, when the referendum happened in 1967, when the Aboriginal people were starting to vote, it was the churches, it was the pastors from all denominations who preached from the pulpit saying we need to include these people in our country. That's how involved the church were. And in those days, in the 1960s, the church was very involved in people's lives. So therefore, it had a great influence. So for them to actually be involved in that, so they were let's call them the first advocates for Aboriginal rights. The churches were really the first advocates for Aboriginal rights.
Is that the first thing we write?
So that's up to you what you write now. And Christian groups have very much been a part of that whole apology thing. I mean, a few years ago, the Australian government, one of their first roles was to apologise when the Labor government got in to the Aboriginal people, and it was the role of the churches that pushed that through. It was the churches speaking on behalf of the Aboriginal people that enabled that to go through. And in fact, there are still many communities and many people dedicated to this movement even today. In 1975, the Whitlam government passed the first legislation for Aboriginal people formally in 1975. And it was the churches, again, it was the churches who applauded this. So not only were the churches involved in political campaigns, but when the government did something they liked with Indigenous rights, the churches applauded the government's position. And they said, that's a good place to be. Well done, that's the right direction. So the churches act as a moral compass for the country. Debbie?
Sorry, what did the Whitlam government pass?
The first land rights legislation. Have you ever seen that picture with Gough Whitlam and the Aboriginal elder pouring sand into the hand? Yeah, that was the signing of the first petition. And similarly, so the churches congratulated the government on Mabo and on Wick, but Howard's 10-point plan? Howard's 10-point plan was a divisive thing. It actually tore down some of the legislation and made it really hard for the Aboriginal people to claim their land back. And so the churches, instead of applauding that, they condemned the government for that legislation. So the churches really did act as a moral compass. So that's the history of... So the churches have really been involved in that reconciliation process. Okay, so I hope you managed to write down a few points for number 2.
Yeah. So what do you mean number 2?
He's just spitting out notes and he's supposed to record. Oh, come on, guys.
Okay, that's right. You'll catch up next time.
No!
Okay, my lecture notes will be available online after this lecture. Let's move on to the next one.
That's right. I'll just go online.
Let's move on, but try to take, that's sensible, but try to take a few key points. Take key points. If you try to, and this is probably a hint for you people out there as well. If you are listening to my dialogue, knowing that my lecture notes will be online, why don't you just take a couple little points to refer back to it, to say, oh, this is important. Like, for example, no. Let's move on. No bathroom breaks during this at all. Ask me in 10 minutes.
You're teaching us not to
Enter. Is it swearing in the classroom?
Yes, and that's showing to the next class.
Oh, that's bad.
Right, here we go.
Get back on top.
I'm annoyed, I'm very annoyed.
I'll be better for the next one. Okay?
You're teaching your phone, not
I will help you
Teaching
to
your
the next one.
phone.
Enter. Enter. It's an acronym as well. Can anyone tell me what it stands for? Yes, you. No. Yes?
It stands for native title.
Oh,
Very good.
I was shit.
Good.
what
Good.
is it?
Okay.
Yes,
So Australians for Native Title and Reconciliation, that's what it stands for.
See, how do I
This
write that
event in
Yeah.
Canberra, there was the big thing that you need to know about ANTAR are the things that they do publicly. For example, when in Canberra there was this thing that happened about Parliament House. You were in primary school when this happened. I think we were in year 5 or 6, and the Aboriginal people actually protested. But the way they did it was very interesting. They cut out hands, put them on a stick, and put them in the ground, and put them all around Parliament House. And they were in the different Aboriginal colours. And it was called the Sea of Hands. If you go to the ANTAR website, you can see pictures of the Sea of Hands. At Terra Sancta College in 2006, we picked up one, and there's a point down there in part B, I'm just going to refer to it quickly now. We at Terra Sancta College for the Year 12 graduation in 2006 actually used that theme, and every single person in the school created a hand, and we put it in the ground as the Year 12s walked into their graduation ceremony to mark that ANTAR protest about Indigenous rights. Why did we do it that year? Because Father Eugene Stockton came to celebrate Mass with us, and he is a renowned Aboriginal advocate. You can still see those orange hands that were stuck in the ground 6 years ago, not that I'm a hoarder or anything, in the prayer room here at Narimba on the cabinet with the children's names on it. Maybe some of your brothers and sisters are down there. So that was something that was a very important part of of this whole Christian Brothers Edmund Rice Centre for Justice's plan about Indigenous rights. Let's move on to the formal apology. We all know that there is a formal apology already in Australia. The government actually wrote one. We have a copy of that formal apology in the Schofields Library. It's framed on the glass. Every single school in Australia got one of these very beautiful manuscripts of that apology. So a big fuss was made of it. The Liberal government refused to apologise, but the Labor government did apologise for their involvement in Indigenous affairs.
That would be because they kind of had to, and then they gave it to the schools. So it's like, yeah, we did this.
Absolutely, that's what it was. It was definitely a publicity campaign, but it was also a fact that here is the apology. This is a significant landmark in Aboriginal rights and in reconciliation. So what did the church have to do with this? Well, the churches were very much involved in the Human Rights and Equal Opportunities Commission. That's where the church's involvement laid in the underlying structure to actually move that apology through. And they were very much involved in the very dramatic report that was produced for this particular group of people called Bringing Them Home that we did in outcome number 2 earlier on. So you've already, hopefully, looked at a couple of stories in the Bringing Them Home report. And you can see that that was the catalyst for the apology to actually move on. And the recommendations from the Royal Commission in order, because of the role the missionaries played in the abuse of the people. And they did. And formal apologies were given from churches way before the government apologised. So let's have a look at the interfaith support for reconciliation. Let's enough of the Christians now. Let's go and have a look at the other faiths for a second, just briefly.